The ship called the Drift was old. It had traveled through the empty space between galaxies for 60,000 years. Inside its metal walls, generations of humans had lived, died, and passed their memories to their children. They never forgot where they came from. They never forgot what happened to their home. Walk through the archive, a massive room filled with screens and old machines that held every record of human history. He was young, only 28 years old, but he had memorized everything in this room. Every story, every image, every scream from the last day of Earth. He stopped in front of a large screen and pressed his hand against it. The screen came alive with an image of a blue planet covered in white clouds. Earth. The home that none of them had ever seen with their own eyes, but all of them carried in their hearts. "You spend too much time here," said a voice behind him. Turned to see standing in the doorway. She was the commander of all military forces on the Drift. Her hair was gray and her face was hard like stone. She had been trained for war since she could walk. Her family had passed down a single promise for 600 generations. That promise was simple: return, make them pay. "Someone has to remember," said quietly. "We all remember," replied. "That is why we are still here." She walked to stand beside him and looked at the image of Earth. For a moment, her hard face softened just a little. "Today is the day," she said. "The other ships have arrived. After all these years, we are finally together again." Felt his heart beat faster. He had heard stories about the other ships his whole life. When Earth was destroyed, 12 ships had escaped into the darkness of space. They scattered in different directions to survive. For 60,000 years they had been alone, traveling through the void, waiting for the day they would meet again. Now that day had come. Led to the main deck of the ship. Through the massive windows he could see them. 11 other ships, each one as large as a city, floating in the darkness around a dead star. Lights blinked on their surfaces like tiny heartbeats. After 60,000 years of silence, humanity was whole again. "How many?" asked, his voice shaking. 200 million, answered. "That is how many of us survived. That is how many of us are ready." An old man approached them. His name was, and he was the chief engineer of the Drift. He had spent 40 years building weapons that their ancestors could only dream about. His hands were rough and covered with scars from his work. "The weapons are ready," said. "Ships that can move through space in ways they cannot understand. Bombs that can make stars collapse. We have had 60,000 years to prepare. They had 60,000 years to forget." They repeated. He knew who meant the. They were an ancient species that ruled a large part of the galaxy. They had conquered or killed 47 other species over 100,000 years. To them, humanity was nothing special, just another weak species to destroy. They had given humans a number, species 31. Then they had burned Earth and moved on to other things. Touched a button on the wall and the screens around them changed. They showed the last recording from Earth. Had seen it 1,000 times, but it still made his blood turn cold. The sky was filled with ships, thousands of them. They fired beams of light that turned cities into ash in seconds. People ran through the streets screaming. Children cried for their parents. And then there was nothing but fire and silence. The recording had one more part. After Earth was destroyed, they had broadcast a message to the entire galaxy. The message included the sounds of humans dying. They played it like music. They laughed about it in their communications. They made jewelry from human bones and sold them as souvenirs. 17 minutes, said, her voice flat and cold. That is how long it took them to kill 8 billion people. 17 minutes. The room was silent. Every person on the deck had stopped to listen. They had all seen this recording before. They had all felt the same anger, the same pain, the same burning need for justice. "They believe we are dead," continued. "They wrote about us in their history books as a minor event. They forgot about us before our ashes were cold. They never searched for survivors. They never worried that we might come back." She turned to face the crowd that had gathered. Soldiers, engineers, doctors, teachers, children, all of them watching her with fire in their eyes. "They made a mistake," said. "The biggest mistake any species has ever made. They let us live. They let us run. They let us have 60,000 years to grow strong, and now we are coming back." The crowd did not cheer. They did not shout. They simply stood there, silent and ready. This was not a moment for celebration. This was a moment they had waited for across thousands of generations. Their ancestors had dreamed of this day. Their children would tell stories about it. Stepped forward and activated a display showing the path to space. It was far away, but their ships could bend space itself. Distance meant nothing to them now. "We move in 6 hours," announced. "Every ship, every weapon, every soul, we go together." Looked around at the faces of his people. They were not the same humans who had fled Earth so long ago. They had evolved. They had enhanced their bodies and minds. They had become something stronger, something harder. But deep inside, they were still human. They still felt love and loss and anger. He walked to a small window and looked out at the gathered fleet. 200 million humans, united after 60,000 years of separation. All of them carrying the same memory. All of them sharing the same purpose. They had tried to erase humanity from existence. They had failed. And now they would learn what it meant to face a species that had nothing left to lose and everything to avenge. Whispered to himself, words that every human child learned before they could walk. "We remember, we return, we repay." In 6 hours, the fleet would move. In 6 hours, humanity would begin its journey home, not to the ashes of Earth, but to the worlds of those who had destroyed it. They had 60,000 years of peace. That peace was about to end. The human fleet moved through space like ghosts. Their ships made no sound, left no trail, and gave no warning. Technology that had been improved over 60,000 years made them invisible to any scanner they possessed. They slipped into enemy territory like shadows entering a dark room. Sat in a small room filled with screens and machines that listened to every signal in space. She was the head of intelligence, and she had spent 30 years studying them. She knew their language, their culture, their weaknesses. She knew how they thought and what they feared. Until now, they feared nothing. "Anything new?" asked, stepping into her room. Was a soldier. His family had been part of the military caste for 400 generations. Every generation had trained the next for one purpose, to fight the. His body had been enhanced with stronger muscles and faster reflexes. His mind had been trained to feel no fear in battle, but his heart still beat like any human heart. "They have no idea we are here," replied, pointing at her screens. "Look at their communications. They talk about trade agreements and political meetings. They argue about taxes and entertainment. They have not fought a real war in 20,000 years." Smiled, but it was not a happy smile. "They got comfortable. They got lazy," corrected. "They conquered so many species that they forgot what it feels like to be the prey." On another ship, stood before a table covered with maps of space. The empire was huge. 3,000 star systems, billions of countless ships and weapons, but she was not worried. Size meant nothing when your enemy could not see you coming. Entered the room and placed a small device on the table. It looked simple, just a metal ball the size of a fist, but inside it was the power to collapse a star. "The gravity bombs are ready," said. "One of these can destroy an entire solar system. We have over 1,000 of them." Picked up the device and felt its weight in her hand. Such a small thing to hold so much destruction. And the dimensional drives. Working perfectly. Our ships can attack from angles they cannot even imagine. We can appear inside their defensive lines, strike, and disappear before they understand what happened. Listened from the corner of the room. He was there to record everything. Future generations needed to know exactly how vengeance was delivered, but part of him felt uneasy. They were evil, yes. They had killed his ancestors without mercy. But the weapons humanity now possessed could kill billions in seconds. Were they becoming the same monsters they had fled from? He kept these thoughts to himself. Now was not the time for doubt. The fleet reached the outer edge of space and stopped. Scout ships were sent ahead, small and fast, to gather information. They returned with images and data that made the humans' blood boil. "This is what we found," said, displaying the images on a large screen. They had a museum. Inside that museum was a section dedicated to extinct species, trophy rooms they called them, and there in a glass case were objects from Earth. A child's stuffed toy burned and torn, a wedding ring still bright after 60,000 years, a flag with stars and stripes ripped and stained with old blood. The room was silent as humans stared at these images. These small objects were all that remained of their home. They had kept them like prizes, like decorations. "They put our history in a glass box," said quietly. Her voice was calm, but her hands were shaking. "They made our extinction into entertainment for their children." Stepped forward, his jaw tight with anger. "When do we attack?" "Soon," replied. "But first we watch, we learn. We make sure that when we strike perfectly." For 3 weeks the human fleet stayed hidden. They watched ships move through space. They listened to conversations. They learned the locations of every military base, every weapon factory, every important target. Discovered something interesting during this time. They had tried to make alliances with neighboring empires. They wanted help in case of emergency, but every empire had refused. They had made too many enemies over the years. They had bullied and threatened too many species. Now, when they needed friends, they had none. "The galaxy hates them," reported. "Everyone is afraid of them, but no one will help them. They are alone." "Good," said. "Let them feel what we felt." On the last night before the attack, walked through the halls of the drift. He passed families eating dinner together. He passed children playing games. He passed old people telling stories about Earth, a place none of them had ever seen but all of them loved. He stopped at a window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there was space. Somewhere out there were the descendants of the creatures who had burned his ancestors alive. Tomorrow, humanity would announce its return. His voice came through the speakers across the entire fleet. "All ships, this is Commander. In 12 hours we begin our operation. I want complete silence until then. No signals, no communications, nothing that could give away our position." She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was softer. 60,000 years ago, our ancestors ran because they had no choice. They hid in the darkness because it was the only way to survive. But they never stopped believing that one day we would return. That day is tomorrow. The fleet went dark. 200 million humans waited in silence, hearts beating together across thousands of ships. They did not speak. They did not sleep. They simply waited. In the Empire, life continued as normal. Ships flew between planets. People worked and played and complained about ordinary things. They had no idea that the species they had erased from existence was now surrounding them. They had no idea that every minute of their peaceful lives was borrowed time. Sat in the archive and opened a blank file. He began to write. "Today is the last day of peace for the Dominion. Tomorrow they will learn that the dead can return. Tomorrow they will understand the price of genocide. I do not know if what we are about to do is right. I only know that it is necessary. History will judge us. But first, we will make history." He saved the file and closed his eyes. Tomorrow would change everything. Tomorrow, humanity would step out of the shadows. And the galaxy would tremble. The military base was one of the strongest in the Empire. 30,000 warships floated around a massive space station. Millions of soldiers lived and trained there. They were proud of. They said it could never be defeated. They were wrong. Commander stood on the bridge of her ship and watched the screens showing. The ships moved slowly, peacefully. They had no idea what was coming. "All ships ready?" she asked. "Ready," came the response from across the fleet. "Begin." What happened next was impossible according to science. Human ships appeared inside the defensive lines, not near them, inside them. One moment there was empty space, and the next moment there were human warships everywhere. They had no time to react. Human weapons fired first, cutting through shields like they were made of paper. Ship after ship exploded in balls of fire. They tried to fight back, but their weapons could not lock onto targets that kept appearing and disappearing from normal space. On the station, alarms screamed. Officers ran to their posts, shouting orders that no one could follow. Their communications were jammed. Their sensors showed impossible readings. Ships that should not exist were destroying their fleet. "What is happening?" screamed the commander. "Who is attacking us?" He got his answer when a message appeared on every screen in the station. 2 words in the old language. "Earth remembers." The commander's face went pale. He grabbed the nearest officer. "Earth, that cannot be right. We destroyed Earth. That was. 60,000 years ago," the officer whispered. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, 30,000 warships had been reduced to floating metal and ash. The mighty station was a broken ruin. Not a single survived. But that was not the amazing part. The amazing part was that humanity had not lost a single ship. Not one. Their technology was so far beyond that it was like comparing a sword to a gun. They had spent 60,000 years staying the same. Humanity had spent 60,000 years getting ready. Watched the destruction with a face that showed no emotion. Beside her was smiling. "It worked," he said. "Everything worked perfectly." "This was just the beginning," replied. "Let one ship escape. Make sure they carry our message." A single small ship was allowed to flee. It ran at maximum speed toward carrying video of the battle and those 2 terrible words, "Earth remembers." When the video reached the High Council, there was panic. 12 olds sat around a table, watching the destruction of again and again. They could not believe what they were seeing. "This is impossible," said one council member. "We killed them all, our records show." "Our records were wrong," interrupted another. "They survived, and now they have come back." The head of the council, an ancient with gray skin and tired eyes, raised his hand for silence. "Find everything we have about this species. Everything." Workers searched through old files that had not been opened in thousands of years. Finally, they found it. A single page about species 31. Humans. Home planet Earth. Status extinct. Notes primitive, emotional, no threat. "No threat," the council head repeated, his voice bitter. "We called them no threat. Now they have destroyed in 6 hours." While the leadership panicked, led a ground force to a nearby planet. This world was not. It was home to another species that they had conquered long ago. These people had been slaves for 10,000 years. They worked in mines and factories, serving their masters. Soldiers landed outside the main slave city. The guards saw them coming and prepared to fight. The fight lasted 4 minutes. When it ended, every guard was dead. The slaves came out of their homes slowly, afraid. They had never seen beings like these before. Removed his helmet so they could see his face. "We are humans," he said. "We are here to free you." An old slave stepped forward, her eyes wide with confusion. "Humans, but they said they destroyed your kind long ago." "They tried," replied. "They failed." Word spread quickly across the slave world. The humans gave them food, medicine, and weapons. They asked for nothing in return. When the slaves asked why, gave them a simple answer. "Because we know what it feels like to lose everything. We know what it feels like to be hunted. No species should have to live as slaves." Back on the human fleet was monitoring communications from across the galaxy. Other empires, other species, were watching what was happening. They were afraid, but they were also curious. Some of them had suffered under cruelty. Some of them had lost worlds and people to attacks. "They are asking who we are," reported two. "They want to know our intentions." "Tell them the truth," said. "We want nothing from them. We are not here to conquer. We are here for thee and thee alone." Recorded everything. The battle the liberation of the slave world, the fear spreading through space. He tried to write without emotion, but his hands shook as he typed. 60,000 years. His people had waited 60,000 years for this moment, and now it was happening. They were learning that the species they had tried to erase was not only alive but stronger than ever. That night called a meeting of all ship commanders. Their faces appeared on screens around her, hundreds of humans united in purpose. "Was the first step," she said, "but we are far from finished. They have 3,000 star systems. We will visit every single one. We will destroy every ship, every weapon, every tool they could use against us. And when we are done, we will go to there." "What about surrender?" asked one commander. "If they try to surrender?" His face hardened. Earth tried to surrender. They broadcast messages begging for mercy. They played those messages for entertainment. They laughed while our ancestors died. She paused. "There will be no surrender. Not until we stand on there and look into their eyes. Then we will decide their fate." The commanders nodded. They understood. This was not a war for territory or power. This was justice, 60,000 years in the making. Closed his eyes and thought about the child's toy in that museum. Some child on Earth had loved that toy. Some child had held it tight while the sky burned. Now that child was dust, and their toy was a trophy for monsters. "Not anymore," he thought. "We are coming for you. We are coming for all of it." The fleet began to move again, heading deeper into space. Behind them burned. Ahead of them an empire trembled. Humanity had announced its return. Now the real war would begin. 18 months passed. In that time, the human fleet moved through space like a fire moving through dry grass. System by system, world by world, they destroyed everything they had built over 100,000 years. Watched it all. He recorded every battle, every victory, every moment of destruction. At first he felt satisfaction. These were the creatures who had killed his ancestors. They deserved this. But as the months passed, he began to feel something else. Something that felt like doubt. He stood on the observation deck, watching a military station burn in the distance. Millions had lived there. Now they were gone. "You look troubled," said a voice behind him. Turned to see standing there. She had not changed in 18 months. Her eyes were still hard. Her voice was still cold. If the destruction bothered her, she never showed it. "I keep wondering," said slowly, "if we have become what we were running from." Walked to stand beside him. For a long moment she said nothing. Then she spoke. "Come with me." She led him to the archive. The room was dark until she touched a control panel. Then the screens came alive with images and sounds that had seen 1,000 times, but that still made his stomach turn. Earth burning, people screaming, children crying, and under it all the sound of laughter. "This is what they did to us," said. "They killed 8 billion people in 17 minutes, but that was not enough for them. They broadcast our death screams across the galaxy. They made our extinction into a joke. They made jewelry from the bones of our children." She turned to face, and for the first time he saw pain in her eyes. Real pain hidden behind all that hardness. "I ask myself the same question sometimes," she admitted. "Are we becoming monsters? But then I remember something my grandmother told me. She said that they did not kill us because they were afraid of us. They killed us because they were bored, because they wanted entertainment, because to them, we were not even people." Pointed at the screen showing Earth's final moments. "We are not doing this for entertainment. We are not doing this because we are bored. We are doing this because if we do not, they will do it again. To us, to others. They will never stop unless we stop them." Had no answer for that. He simply nodded and returned to his recording. In another part of space, prepared to use the gravity bombs for the first time. The target was a star system that produced most of the weapons. Factories floated in space around 7 planets. Millions of workers built ships and guns day and night. Held the small metal ball in his hand, such a simple thing, such terrible power. "Are you sure about this?" asked the captain of his ship. "No," admitted, "but I am sure that if we do not do this, they will rebuild. They will come for us again, and next time we might not escape." He pressed the button. The bomb flew toward the star at the center of the system. When it reached the star, something impossible happened. The star began to collapse. It fell in on itself, growing smaller and smaller, pulling everything nearby into its grip. Planets cracked apart. Factories crumbled. Ships tried to flee but could not escape the terrible gravity. In minutes, the entire system was gone. 100 million died without even understanding what had killed them. Watched with eyes that showed no joy. "May our ancestors forgive us," he whispered, "and may our children understand." The destruction of the weapons system sent a message to the rest of the galaxy. Humanity was not just dangerous. Humanity could destroy stars. No species had ever shown such power. Intercepted communications from other empires. They were terrified. They begged each other for information about the humans. Who were they? What did they want? Could they be stopped? "They think we are going to conquer the galaxy," told. "They think we will come for them next." "Let them think what they want," replied. "We have one enemy. When that enemy is finished, we will rest." But not everyone in the human fleet agreed with methods. A group of officers came to her with a request. They wanted to offer a chance to surrender. They wanted to end the war before more millions died. Listened to them patiently. Then she asked a simple question. "Have you seen the complete archive, all of it?" The officers shook their heads. Like most humans, they had seen parts of it, the famous recordings, the speeches, the images of Earth burning, but there was more, much more. Took them to a private room and showed them everything. The recordings that were too terrible to share publicly. The videos of soldiers playing games with human prisoners. The audio of commanders placing bets on how long humans would scream before dying. The images of children wearing necklaces made from human teeth. When it was over, the officers sat in silence. Some of them were crying. Some of them were shaking with rage. "Do you still want to offer them surrender?" asked quietly. No one answered. No one needed to. Continued to lead ground forces to liberate slave worlds. But for the first time, humanity suffered losses. A desperate force, knowing they would die anyway, launched a suicide attack on one of ships. 47 human soldiers died. Stood over their bodies, his face twisted with grief and anger. These were his brothers and sisters. They had trained together, eaten together, dreamed together of this moment. Now they were gone. "Burn it," he ordered, pointing at the world below. "Burn it all." His soldiers obeyed. The planet's military bases, factories, and government buildings were reduced to ash. Only the civilian areas were left untouched. Even in his anger, remembered that there were innocent too. Children who had never hurt anyone. Old people who had no part in the destruction of Earth. But the line between innocent and guilty was getting harder to see. The fleet finally reached the edge of the home system. Beyond this point was Prime, the birthplace of the Dominion, the heart of the Empire, the place where the decision to destroy Earth had been made 60,000 years ago. Gathered all the commanders one last time. Their faces were tired but determined. They had come so far. They had lost friends and family. They had done things that would haunt them forever, but they were not finished yet. "Tomorrow we enter their home system," said. "They have gathered everything they have left to defend it. Over 100,000 ships, billions of soldiers. They will fight harder than they have ever fought because they have nowhere left to run." She paused and looked at each face on the screens. "Neither do we. This is what we have waited for. This is what our ancestors dreamed about, Tomorrow we finish it." The commanders nodded. No one spoke. Words were not needed. Stayed on the observation deck that night, watching the distant stars of the home system. Somewhere out there in a museum sat a child's toy, a wedding ring, a torn flag. Tomorrow he would get them back. He thought about the child who had owned that toy. He thought about the couple who had worn those rings. He thought about the people who had saluted that flag. "We are almost there," he whispered to the ghosts of Earth. "We did not forget, we never forgot." Tomorrow, 60,000 years of waiting would end. Tomorrow, humanity would stand at the gates of Prime. And they would finally understand that some species should never be underestimated. The home system was beautiful. 3 suns burned in the center and 12 planets circled them. Prime was the 4th planet, a world of golden cities and silver towers. For 100,000 years, it had been the capital of an empire. Today, it would become a monument to failure. They had gathered everything. 100,000 warships formed a wall around there. Orbital stations bristled with weapons. Billions of soldiers waited on the surface, ready to fight to the last breath. They knew this was the end. They would not surrender. They would not beg. They would die as they had lived, proud and defiant. Stood on the bridge of her flagship and looked at the enemy fleet. It was the largest force that had ever assembled. Against any other enemy, it would have been unstoppable. But humanity was not any other enemy. "Send them our terms," ordered. A message was broadcast to every ship and every screen on Prime. His face appeared, calm and cold, speaking in perfect language. "People of the Dominion, 60,000 years ago you burned our world, you killed our people. You erased our history. Today, we stand at your gates and we offer you a choice." She paused, letting her words sink in. "Surrender completely. Dismantle your military. Give up your empire, accept our judgment. If you do this, your species will survive. You will live under restrictions, but you will live." Another pause. "If you refuse, we will destroy your fleet. We will land on your world. And we will make you watch as we take back what you stole from us. The choice is yours. You have 1 hour." The message ended. Across the home system there was chaos. Some screamed for surrender. Others demanded war. Arguments broke out in the streets and in the government halls. The High Council met one final time. 12 old, survivors of 100 political battles, now faced the end of everything they knew. "We cannot surrender," said the council head. We have ruled this galaxy for 100,000 years. We do not kneel to lesser species." "Lesser species," shouted another council member. "They destroyed our fleets. They collapsed our stars. If that is a lesser species, what does that make us?" The argument continued until the hour was almost over. Finally, the council head stood and made his decision. "We will fight. If we must die, we will die with honor. Send our answer." The answer came to the human fleet, a single word in the old battle language. It meant "come and try." Nodded slowly, "So be it." The Battle of Prime began. Human ships appeared everywhere at once, slipping through dimensions that science could not understand. They struck from above, below, and every angle in between. Ships fired back, but their weapons could not hit targets that were there one moment and gone the next. The battle lasted 3 days. It was the longest fight of the entire war. They fought with desperate courage, throwing everything they had at the human fleet. They knew they were losing, but they refused to stop. On the second day, a commander managed to crash his ship into a human vessel. It was the first human ship lost in the battle. 47 more would fall before the end. But for every human ship destroyed, 1,000 ships burned. By the 3rd day, the fleet was gone. The orbital stations were silent. The defenses were broken. Prime lay open to the sky, waiting for judgment. Rode in one of the first ships to land on the planet. His mission was simple: go to the museum and recover the Earth artifacts. But nothing felt simple anymore. The streets of the capital were empty. The golden towers cast long shadows in the light of 3 suns. Somewhere, civilians hid in their homes, waiting to see what the humans would do. Found the museum. The building was massive, filled with treasures from 100 conquered worlds. He walked through halls of alien art and strange machines until he found the room he was looking for. The trophy room. Glass cases lined the walls, each one holding pieces of a dead civilization. Walked past the remains of species he had never heard of, species that had been erased from existence long before Earth was born. And then he found it, the human case. The child's toy sat on a small stand. It was a stuffed bear, brown and worn, one eye missing. Next to it was a wedding ring, still shining after 60,000 years. And behind them, folded carefully, was a flag with stars and stripes. His hands shook as he opened the case. He picked up the toy and held it against his chest. Tears ran down his face. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm sorry we took so long." He gathered the artifacts carefully and placed them in a bag. These would go home with humanity, wherever humanity decided to make its new home. They would never be trophies again. Outside the museum, the High Council was brought before. They stood in chains, their proud robes torn and dirty. The council head still tried to stand tall, but his eyes were filled with fear. "Kill us," he said. "That is what you came to do, finish it." Looked at him for a long moment, then she spoke. "No." The council head blinked. "No. Death is too easy," said. "Death would let you escape. Death would make you martyrs. We do not want that." She turned to address not just the council, but the entire planet. Her voice was broadcast everywhere. "People of you will live, all of you will live, but you will live with consequences. Your military is gone, your empire is over. You will be stripped of all technology above basic survival level. No starships, no weapons, no way to leave your world." She paused to let the words sink in. "You will rebuild. It will take thousands of years. And every day, every year, every generation, you will remember why this happened. You will teach your children the truth about what you did. You will tell them about Earth. You will tell them about the price of genocide." The council head's face twisted with rage. "You cannot do this. This is worse than death." "Yes," agreed, "it is." Watch from nearby. He thought he would feel joy at this moment, or at least satisfaction, but all he felt was tired, so very tired. The human fleet spent 1 week on Prime. They destroyed every weapon, every ship, every piece of advanced technology. They left with nothing but the basics: food, shelter, medicine. Everything else was gone. Before leaving, broadcast a message to the entire galaxy. Her words reached every species on every world. "Humanity has returned. We seek no empire. We want no slaves. We claim no territory beyond what we need to live in peace. But we remember everything. We remember our friends and we remember our enemies. And we are very, very patient." The fleet departed space. Behind them, a fallen empire began its long recovery. Ahead of them, a galaxy watched with fear and wonder. Stood on the observation deck looking at the stars. Joined her, looking older than his years. "What now?" he asked. "Now we find a new home," said, "and we make sure no one ever forgets the price of genocide." Finished his final record that night. He wrote slowly, choosing each word carefully. "Today marks the end of our journey to Prime. 60,000 years ago, our ancestors fled into the darkness with nothing but hope and memory. They passed that hope and memory to their children, and their children, and their children across 600 generations. They never gave up. They never forgot. And today, their faith was rewarded." He paused, thinking about everything he had seen. The battles, the destruction, the tears and the blood. "I do not know if what we did was right. History will judge us. But I know this: we survived. Against all odds, against an enemy that wanted to erase us from existence, we survived. And we proved that humanity is not so easy to kill." He saved the file and closed his eyes. 1,000 years later, humanity had a new world. They called it memory. At its center stood a monument with billions of names carved in stone, every name recovered from Earth's final records. Children played in its shadow, learning stories of a world they had never seen but would always love. And in a quiet museum on memory, a worn stuffed bear sat in a place of honor, watching over the future with its one remaining eye. Humanity had come home. Not to Earth. Earth was gone forever. But home was never really a place. Home was the people who remembered. Home was the children who carried the stories forward. Home was the promise that no matter how dark the night, humanity would always find its way back to the light. They had been scattered. They had been hunted. They had been left for dead in the cold space between galaxies. But they had come back. They always came back.